Best friend steals million-dollar idea. 10 years later, the real inventor returns with a master plan. Hello, welcome. Leave a like, subscribe, activate notifications, and enjoy this story. The years had not been kind to Noah. Betrayed by the one person he trusted most, he spent a decade in the shadows, haunted by the theft that shattered his dreams. Now he's back. But this isn't just a story of revenge. This is about a man who lost everything and must decide if the road to redemption lies in the very hands that destroyed him. As he steps into the home of the man who stole his life, an unexpected truth begins to unfold. One that will challenge every ounce of his resolve and force him to confront the deepest parts of his soul. Imagine carrying the weight of a decade of pain, knowing that the life you were meant to live was taken from you. What would you do when faced with the one who ruined you? Noah's story isn't just about a stolen idea. It's about a stolen life, a shattered heart, and a choice that could either save or destroy everything he has left. As the tension builds, you'll be on the edge of your seat, wondering, how far would you go to reclaim what's yours? The harsh screech of bus brakes pierced the quiet suburban air as Noah Matthews stepped onto the cracked sidewalk of his hometown, Millbrook, Connecticut. The weight of his worn leather suitcase felt like an anchor, dragging him back to a past he'd spent a decade trying to escape. At 38, Noah's once bright eyes now held a haunted look, his shoulders slightly hunched as if carrying an invisible burden. As he trudged down Main Street, the autumn leaves crunched beneath his feet, a stark reminder of how much time had passed. 10 years. 10 long years since his best friend, Jack Reynolds, had stolen his million-dollar idea and left him with nothing but broken dreams and a shattered spirit. Noah's gaze lingered on the storefronts he once knew so well. Joe's Diner, where he and Jack had spent countless hours brainstorming over greasy burgers and endless cups of coffee, was still there, its neon sign flickering weakly in the fading daylight. The sight of it made Noah's stomach churn with a mixture of nostalgia and bitterness. As he walked, snippets of conversation drifted to his ears. Two elderly women gossiping on a nearby bench caught his attention. "Did you hear about Jack Reynolds? Poor thing's not doing well at all," one whispered, her voice laced with pity. "Such a shame," the other replied, shaking her head. "All that money, and now—" Their words trailed off as Noah passed, but they had already reignited the spark of curiosity and anger that had brought him back to Millbrook. Jack was sick? The news should have brought him satisfaction, but instead, it left a hollow feeling in his chest. Noah's feet carried him to the old playground where he and Jack had first met as kids. The rusty swing set creaked in the wind, a melancholy sound that seemed to echo the ache in Noah's heart. He sat down on one of the swings, his tall frame looking comically out of place. As he gently rocked back and forth, memories flooded his mind. He could almost see two young boys, full of dreams and promise, swinging higher and higher, convinced they could touch the sky. How naive they had been, how trusting. The invention that had torn them apart had been so simple yet revolutionary. A device that could convert kinetic energy from everyday movements into usable electricity. Noah had poured his heart and soul into it, working tirelessly in his garage, fueled by nothing but instant noodles and determination. Jack had been there every step of the way, offering encouragement and support, or so Noah had thought. The day Jack had betrayed him played out in Noah's mind like a movie he couldn't turn off. The patent office, the look of feigned confusion on Jack's face, the realization that his best friend had filed the patent in his own name. The world had crumbled around Noah that day, leaving him with nothing but the clothes on his back and a broken heart. As the sun began to set, casting long shadows across the playground, Noah's resolve hardened. He hadn't come back just to reminisce. He was here for answers, for justice, for something. The plan he'd crafted over years of sleepless nights and bitter days now seemed less certain in the face of Jack's reported illness. With a deep sigh, Noah stood up from the swing and started walking towards the affluent part of town where he knew Jack's mansion stood. Each step felt heavier than the last, but he pressed on, driven by a mixture of determination and dread. As he rounded the corner onto Maple Avenue, the Reynolds estate came into view. The sprawling mansion, with its manicured lawns and ornate fountains, was a stark reminder of everything Noah had lost. He stood at the wrought iron gates, his hand hovering over the intercom button. In that moment, a sleek black car pulled up to the gate. The driver's window rolled down, revealing a middle-aged woman with worry lines etched deep into her face. She eyed Noah suspiciously. "Can I help you?" she asked, her tone guarded. Noah's mouth went dry. He hadn't prepared for this. I'm an old friend of Jack's," he managed to stammer out. "I heard he wasn't well, and I wanted to." The woman's expression softened slightly. "You must be one of the few who still care," she said, a hint of sadness in her voice. "Mr. Reynolds doesn't get many visitors these days." She pressed a button, and the gates began to swing open. "You can follow me up to the house," she offered. As Noah walked up the long driveway, his heart pounded in his chest. He had imagined this moment 1,000 times, but now that it was here, he felt unprepared. What would he say to Jack? What could he say to the man who had stolen his future? The enormous front door loomed before him, its polished wood gleaming in the last rays of sunlight. Noah raised his hand to knock, but before he could, the door swung open. There, framed in the doorway, stood Jack Reynolds. But this wasn't the Jack that Noah remembered. This man was gaunt, his skin sallow, his once vibrant eyes sunken and dull. He leaned heavily on a cane, his breath coming in short, labored gasps. For a moment, they just stared at each other, a decade of unspoken words hanging in the air between them. Then, Jack's eyes widened in recognition, a mix of emotions flashing across his face: surprise, fear, and something that looked almost like relief. "Noah!" Jack's voice was barely above a whisper, fragile and uncertain. "Is it really you?" Noah stood frozen, all his carefully prepared words evaporating in the face of Jack's obvious decline. This wasn't how it was supposed to go. He had expected to confront a smug, wealthy man, not this shell of his former friend. As the silence stretched between them, heavy with the weight of their shared history, Noah realized that the path forward was no longer clear. The line between right and wrong, once so sharply defined in his mind, had suddenly become blurred. With a deep breath, Noah stepped over the threshold, into the house that should have been his, to face the friend who had betrayed him. As the door closed behind him with a soft click, he knew that whatever happened next would change both their lives forever. The first chapter of their new story was about to unfold, and Noah couldn't shake the feeling that it might not end the way he had planned. The air crackled with tension and unspoken emotions as the two men, once as close as brothers, now strangers, prepared to confront the ghosts of their past and the uncertain future that lay ahead. The opulent foyer of Jack's mansion felt suffocating as Noah stepped inside. Crystal chandeliers cast a soft glow over marble floors and priceless artwork, a stark reminder of the wealth built on his stolen idea. Jack shuffled forward, his cane tapping a somber rhythm on the polished stone. "I never thought I'd see you again," Jack said, his voice barely above a whisper. After all this time, Noah's fists clenched at his sides, a decade of pent-up anger threatening to explode. But the sight of Jack's frail form gave him pause. This wasn't the arrogant tycoon he'd expected to confront. "Why don't we sit down?" Jack offered, gesturing towards a nearby sitting room. "I'm afraid I don't have the strength I once did." Wordlessly, Noah followed. The room was tastefully decorated, but signs of neglect were evident. A thin layer of dust on the mantel, wilting flowers in a vase. They settled into plush armchairs, an ornate coffee table between them like a physical manifestation of the gulf that separated them. For a long moment, silence reigned. Noah's mind raced, all his rehearsed speeches suddenly inadequate. It was Jack who finally broke the tension. "I know why you're here, Noah," he said, his eyes downcast. "And I'm sorry. Those words seem so inadequate. But, sorry?" Noah interrupted, his voice low and dangerous. "You're sorry? Do you have any idea what you did to me, Jack? You didn't just steal my idea. You stole my future, my dreams, everything." Jack flinched as if struck. "I know," he whispered, God, I know. Not a day has gone by that I haven't regretted what I did. Noah leaned forward, his eyes blazing. Regret? That's rich, coming from you. Living in this mansion, surrounded by luxury. While you what, Noah? Jack asked, a hint of his old fire returning. What have you been doing all these years? The question caught Noah off guard. What had he been doing? Drifting from job to job, nursing his anger, plotting his revenge. He'd put his life on hold, consumed by bitterness. Jack seemed to read his thoughts. I made a terrible mistake, he admitted. But I've paid for it, Noah. More than you know. What are you talking about? Noah demanded. You're rich, successful, and dying, Jack finished quietly. The words hung in the air, heavy and undeniable. Noah felt the ground shift beneath him, his carefully constructed narrative crumbling. Jack continued, his voice growing weaker. The company, it's failing. The technology, your technology, it needed you. I could never fully develop it the way you could have. And now, he gestured vaguely at himself. Well, let's just say karma has a way of catching up. Noah's mind reeled. This wasn't how it was supposed to go. Where was his moment of triumph? The satisfaction of seeing Jack brought low? I don't expect your forgiveness, Jack said. I don't deserve it. But I had to see you one last time, to tell you how sorry I am, and to beg for your help. My help? Noah echoed incredulously. You must be joking. Jack shook his head slowly. The company is on the brink of collapse. Thousands of jobs are at stake. And my family, his voice broke. My wife, my daughter, they don't know about any of it. The fraud, the stolen idea, the impending bankruptcy. I can't leave them with nothing, Noah. Please. Noah stood abruptly, pacing the room. This was too much. He'd come here for justice, for revenge. Not to be confronted with a dying man's plea. Why should I help you? He demanded. After everything you've done? Jack's eyes met his, filled with a mixture of remorse and desperation. Because you're a better man than I ever was, Noah. Because despite everything, I know the person you used to be, kind, brilliant, compassionate, is still in there somewhere. Noah turned away, unable to bear the weight of Jack's gaze. His mind was a whirlwind of conflicting emotions. Anger, pity, confusion. I need time to think, he said finally, his voice rough. Jack nodded weakly. Of course, I understand. But please, Noah, we don't have much time. As Noah made his way to the door, a new voice stopped him in his tracks. Daddy? Who's this? A young girl, no more than 8 years old, stood in the doorway. Her curious eyes darted between Jack and Noah, innocent and unaware of the painful history that hung in the air. Jack's face softened as he looked at his daughter. This is an old friend of Daddy's, sweetheart. Noah, this is my daughter, Emily. Emily smiled shyly at Noah. Nice to meet you, Mr. Noah. Are you going to help make Daddy better? The question, so simple and hopeful, hit Noah like a physical blow. He looked at Jack, saw the fear and love in his eyes as he gazed at his daughter, and felt something shift inside him. I don't know yet, Emily, Noah answered honestly. But I'm going to try. As he left the mansion, stepping out into the cool evening air, Noah felt the weight of his decision pressing down on him. He had come seeking vengeance, but now found himself faced with an impossible choice. Could he really help the man who had destroyed his life? And if he didn't, could he live with the consequences? The lights of Millbrook twinkled in the distance as Noah walked away from the Reynolds estate, his mind churning with possibilities. He didn't have answers yet, but he knew one thing for certain: nothing would ever be the same again. The neon sign of the Starlight Motel flickered intermittently, casting an eerie glow over Noah as he paced the worn carpet of his rented room. The cheap digital clock on the nightstand read 3:27 a.m., but sleep was the furthest thing from his mind. His encounter with Jack had left him reeling, torn between the thirst for revenge that had sustained him for a decade and an unexpected surge of empathy he couldn't quite suppress. Noah's eyes fell on the tattered leather suitcase in the corner. He crossed the room in 3 quick strides and yanked it open, pulling out a dog-eared notebook. Its pages were filled with sketches, equations, and half-formed ideas, the remnants of the brilliant mind that had conceived the invention Jack stole. As he flipped through the pages, memories flooded back. Late nights in his old garage, the smell of coffee and motor oil, Jack's encouraging words as they worked side by side. It all seemed like a lifetime ago. "Damn it, Jack," Noah muttered, sinking onto the creaky bed. "Why did you have to make this so complicated?" He thought of Emily, Jack's innocent daughter, her eyes full of hope as she asked if he would help make her daddy better. The image gnawed at him, challenging the narrative of justice he'd clung to for so long. With a frustrated groan, Noah grabbed his jacket and headed out into the cool night air. His feet carried him through the quiet streets of Millbrook, past shuttered storefronts and darkened houses, until he found himself standing in front of a familiar building. The old garage where he'd created his invention stood silent and abandoned, a for lease sign hanging crookedly in the window. Noah tried the door, surprised to find it unlocked. The musty smell of disuse hit him as he stepped inside, memories washing over him like a tidal wave. In the dim light filtering through grimy windows, he could almost see the ghosts of his younger self and Jack, hunched over a workbench, excitedly discussing the potential of their idea. The betrayal that followed felt even more bitter in this place where their friendship had seemed unbreakable. "I should just walk away," Noah said aloud, his voice echoing in the empty space. "Let Jack face the consequences of his actions. It's what he deserves." But even as the words left his mouth, he knew he couldn't do it. The thought of Emily losing her father, of a family destroyed by secrets and lies, weighed heavily on his conscience. As the first rays of dawn began to creep through the windows, Noah made his decision. He couldn't forgive Jack, or not yet, maybe not ever, but he couldn't let innocence suffer for his friend's mistakes either. With newfound determination, Noah left the garage and headed back to his motel. He had work to do. Later that morning, Noah stood outside the imposing gates of Jack's mansion once again. This time, when he pressed the intercom, it was Jack's tired voice that answered. "Noah? I didn't expect. We need to talk." Noah cut him off. "About the company, about the technology. Everything." There was a pause. Then the gates swung open with a soft hum. As Noah walked up the long driveway, he saw Jack waiting at the front door, leaning heavily on his cane. The relief on his former friend's face was palpable. "Thank you for coming back," Jack said as Noah approached. "I know this can't be easy for you." Noah's jaw tightened. "I'm not doing this for you, Jack. I'm doing it for your family, and for the people whose jobs are at stake. But make no mistake, this doesn't make us friends again." Jack nodded, a flicker of pain crossing his features. "I understand. Please come in. There's so much we need to discuss." As they settled into Jack's home office, surrounded by the trappings of the success built on Noah's stolen idea, the tension between them was palpable. Noah's eyes were drawn to a framed photo on the desk, Jack with his arm around a smiling woman, Emily perched on his shoulders, all of them looking impossibly happy. "Your wife doesn't know anything?" Noah asked, nodding towards the picture. Jack shook his head, his expression haunted. "Sarah thinks the company is doing fine. She has no idea about any of it. The fraud, the stolen idea, my illness. I've been too much of a coward to tell her the truth." Noah leaned back in his chair, studying the man before him. Jack looked even worse in the harsh light of day. His skin sallow, dark circles under his eyes. Despite everything, Noah felt a twinge of pity. "All right," Noah said finally. "Show me everything. Financial reports, development plans, current prototypes. If there's any chance of salvaging this mess, I need to know what I'm dealing with." As Jack began pulling out folders and turning on his computer, Noah couldn't help but feel a mix of emotions. Part of him still burned with anger at the injustice of it all. But another part, the part that remembered the thrill of invention, the joy of creating something truly revolutionary, felt a spark of excitement at the challenge ahead. For hours, They pored over documents and spreadsheets, Noah asking pointed questions and Jack answering as best he could. It became clear that while the company had initial success, Jack's lack of deep understanding of the technology had led to stagnation and mounting problems. As the day wore on, Noah found himself slipping back into the role of inventor and problem solver, his mind racing with possibilities. Ideas he'd suppressed for years came flooding back, potential solutions presenting themselves. It was late afternoon when a soft knock at the door interrupted their work. Emily peeked in, her eyes lighting up when she saw Noah. "Mr. Noah, you came back!" she exclaimed, rushing over to give him an unexpected hug. Noah stiffened for a moment before awkwardly patting her back. "Hey there, Emily," he said, his voice gentler than he'd intended. "Are you going to stay for dinner?" she asked hopefully. "Mommy's making lasagna. It's the best." Noah glanced at Jack, seeing the mixture of love and guilt in the other man's eyes as he looked at his daughter. In that moment, the full weight of the situation hit Noah anew. This wasn't just about righting a wrong or saving a company. It was about a family, about a little girl's future. "I'd love to stay for dinner, Emily," Noah found himself saying. "If that's okay with your dad." Jack nodded, a glimmer of hope in his tired eyes. "Of course, we'd be honored to have you." As Emily skipped out of the room, chattering excitedly about setting an extra place at the table, Noah turned back to Jack. The anger was still there, simmering beneath the surface, but it was tempered now by a growing sense of purpose. "This doesn't change anything between us," Noah said firmly, "but I'm going to do everything I can to fix this mess. For Emily's sake, and for all the people who depend on this company." Jack's eyes welled with tears. "Thank you, Noah. I know I don't deserve your help, but you're right, you don't." Noah cut him off. "But sometimes we have to do the right thing, even when it's hard. Even when every instinct is telling us to walk away." As they gathered up the papers and prepared to join Jack's family for dinner, Noah couldn't shake the feeling that he was stepping onto a path that would change everything. The road ahead would be difficult, filled with challenges both professional and personal. But for the first time in 10 years, Noah felt a sense of direction, a glimmer of the passion that had once defined his life. The moral dilemma that had tormented him since his return to Millbrook was far from resolved. But as he followed Jack out of the office, Noah knew he had made the first step towards something greater than revenge. Whether it led to redemption or further heartbreak remained to be seen. The following week passed in a blur of activity for Noah. He'd temporarily moved into a small guest house on Jack's property, spending long days poring over company documents and nights tossing and turning, haunted by doubts and conflicting emotions. It was during one of these late-night sessions, as Noah sat surrounded by stacks of papers in the guest house's makeshift office, that he stumbled upon something that made his blood run cold. Hidden within a folder of seemingly innocuous financial reports was a series of emails and memos that painted a damning picture. Not only had Jack stolen Noah's original idea, but he'd also engaged in a pattern of corporate espionage and fraud to maintain his position at the top. Noah's hands shook as he read through the documents. There were payoffs to silence whistleblowers, fabricated test results to secure government contracts, and evidence of tax evasion on a massive scale. It was far worse than he'd imagined. As dawn broke, Noah sat back in his chair, his mind reeling. He'd known Jack had betrayed him, but this was beyond anything he'd anticipated. The company wasn't just failing. It was a house of cards built on lies and corruption. Worse still, Noah realized with growing horror that the impending investigation Jack had mentioned wasn't just about financial irregularities. It was a full-scale federal probe that could send Jack to prison for years, destroying his family and leaving thousands of employees jobless. Noah's first instinct was to confront Jack immediately, to demand explanations and unleash the full force of his renewed anger. But as he stood to leave the guest house, he caught sight of a family photo on the mantel. Jack, Sarah, and Emily smiled back at him, frozen in a moment of happiness that now seemed like a cruel illusion. Emily's innocent face gave him pause. Could he really be the one to shatter her world? To take her father away and leave her family in ruins? With a heavy heart, Noah decided to dig deeper before making any moves. He spent the next few days discreetly investigating, using his technical skills to access secure servers and piece together the full extent of Jack's misdeeds. What he found left him feeling sick. The corruption went deeper than he'd initially thought, implicating not just Jack but several high-ranking executives and even a few government officials. It was a tangled web of deceit that threatened to ensnare everyone it touched. On a rainy Thursday afternoon, as Noah sat in his car outside the local elementary school, watching Emily chat happily with her friends as she waited for her mother to pick her up, he made a decision that would change everything. He couldn't let Jack's crimes go unpunished. The truth had to come out, but he also couldn't bear the thought of Emily's life being destroyed by her father's mistakes. There had to be a way to bring justice without sacrificing innocence. With renewed determination, Noah drove to the mansion, his mind racing with possibilities. As he pulled up the driveway, he saw Jack sitting on the front porch, looking more frail than ever. "Noah," Jack called out weakly as he approached. "I was hoping we could talk. There's something I need to tell you." Noah's heart pounded as he climbed the steps. Did Jack know he'd discovered the truth? Was he finally ready to come clean? But before Jack could continue, the front door burst open, and Sarah, Jack's wife, rushed out. Her face was pale, her eyes red-rimmed from crying. "Jack, I just got off the phone with the lawyer," she said, her voice trembling. "They're coming. The FBI, the SEC. They're going to arrest you tomorrow morning." Jack's face crumpled, and he buried his head in his hands. "I'm so sorry, Sarah. I never meant for any of this to happen." Sarah turned to Noah, confusion and desperation in her eyes. "Noah, please. I don't understand what's happening. Jack says you're here to help. Is there anything you can do?" Noah looked from Sarah to Jack, feeling the weight of their expectations, the gravity of the secrets he now held. In that moment, he realized that the path forward was far more complex and treacherous than he'd ever imagined. "I'll do everything I can," Noah heard himself say, even as his mind raced with the implications of his words. "But first, I need to know everything. No more secrets, no more lies." As the three of them moved inside, the rain picking up outside as if to underscore the gravity of the moment, Noah knew he was standing at a crossroads. The decisions he made in the coming hours would not only determine Jack's fate, but would shape the lives of everyone touched by this tangled web of deceit and betrayal. The truth was finally coming to light, but Noah couldn't shake the feeling that the real challenges were only just beginning. As he settled into an armchair, preparing to hear Jack's full confession, he silently vowed to find a way through this mess that would bring justice without destroying the innocent lives caught in the crossfire. Little did he know that the greatest tests of his resolve, his intellect, and his humanity still lay ahead. The clock was ticking, and Noah Matthews, once a broken man seeking revenge, now found himself the unlikely linchpin in a drama that would test the limits of forgiveness, redemption, and the true meaning of justice. The grandfather clock in Jack's study chimed midnight, its solemn tone punctuating the heavy silence that had fallen over the room. Noah sat rigid in his chair, his mind reeling from the hours of confession he'd just heard. Jack, slumped in his seat, looked utterly defeated, while Sarah paced by the window, her face a mask of shock and disbelief. "So that's everything," Jack said, his voice barely above a whisper. "Every lie, every betrayal, every illegal act. God, Noah, I'm so sorry. I know it doesn't begin to make up for what I've done. But, stop." Noah cut him off, raising a hand. "I didn't come back to hear apologies, Jack. I came back for the truth, and now I have it." Sarah turned from the window, her eyes red-rimmed but fierce. "What are we going to do? The FBI will be here in a matter of hours. Our whole life, everything we've built, it's all going to come crashing down." Noah stood up, pacing the room as his brilliant mind worked overtime. The situation was dire, but not entirely hopeless. If he could just find a way to... A soft knock at the door interrupted his thoughts. Emily stood there in her pajamas, clutching a stuffed animal. "Mommy? Daddy? I had a bad dream," she said, her voice small and frightened. The adults exchanged panicked looks. Emily couldn't see them like this, couldn't know the storm that was about to break over their family. "I've got this," Noah said quietly to Jack and Sarah. He crossed the room and knelt down in front of Emily. "Hey there, kiddo. Bad dreams are no fun." "Huh? How about I tell you a story to help you get back to sleep?" Emily nodded, a small smile replacing her frown. As Noah led her back to her room, he felt a surge of protectiveness. This innocent child didn't deserve to suffer for her father's mistakes. After tucking Emily in and spinning a tale about a brave little girl who could fight off nightmares, Noah returned to the study. His mind was made up. "All right," he said, his voice filled with a new determination. "Here's what we're going to do." Over the next few hours, Noah outlined a plan so audacious it bordered on insanity. They would use the very technology that had started this whole mess, Noah's original invention, to save the company and mitigate the legal fallout. "It won't be easy," Noah warned, "and it won't erase what's been done. But if we play this right, we might be able to save the jobs of thousands of employees, protect Emily's future, and still see justice served." Jack and Sarah listened, hope slowly replacing despair in their eyes. As dawn broke, they had a plan of action. The next few weeks were a whirlwind of activity. Noah worked around the clock, refining and expanding his original designs. He brought in trusted engineers and lawyers, carefully vetted to ensure they weren't implicated in Jack's past misdeeds. Jack, for his part, did something that shocked everyone. He went public with his crimes. In a press conference that made national news, he confessed to everything, announcing his immediate resignation and vowing to cooperate fully with authorities. The media frenzy was intense. Reporters camped outside the Reynolds estate, hungry for any new development. But inside, protected from the chaos, Noah and his team worked tirelessly. They presented a proposal to the government. In exchange for leniency in Jack's sentencing, they would turn over all evidence of corruption, including the names of implicated officials. More importantly, they would fast-track the development of Noah's technology, which had the potential to revolutionize clean energy production on a global scale. It was a gamble, but one that paid off. The government, eager to salvage something positive from the scandal and enticed by the technology's potential, agreed to the deal. As weeks turned to months, the company began to transform under Noah's leadership. Corrupt executives were ousted, ethical practices were instilled, and a new sense of purpose energized the workforce. Jack, true to his word, accepted responsibility for his actions. He was sentenced to house arrest and hefty fines rather than prison time, allowing him to remain with his family while still facing consequences for his actions. 1 year to the day after Noah's return to Millbrook, he stood on a stage in Washington, D.C., demonstrating the full potential of his invention to a crowd of politicians, scientists, and journalists. As applause filled the auditorium, Noah caught sight of Jack in the back of the room, Emily perched on his shoulders. Their eyes met across the crowded space. Jack nodded, a gesture of respect and gratitude that spoke volumes. Noah returned the nod, not quite ready to forgive, but no longer consumed by bitterness. As he fielded questions from excited reporters, Noah reflected on the twists and turns that had brought him to this moment. He had come seeking revenge but found something far more valuable: redemption, not just for Jack, but for himself. The future stretched out before him, filled with possibilities he had once thought lost forever. And while the scars of the past would never fully heal, Noah realized that he had finally reclaimed his life, his purpose, and his capacity for compassion. As he left the stage to thunderous applause, Noah felt a sense of peace wash over him. The story wasn't over. There would be new challenges, new innovations, new chances to make a difference. But for the first time in a decade, he was truly looking forward to what came next. In choosing justice tempered with mercy, in finding a way to right wrongs without destroying lives, Noah had not only saved a company and a family, he had saved himself. And that, he realized, was the greatest invention of all. As the applause faded and the crowd began to disperse from the Washington, D.C. auditorium, Noah found himself surrounded by a swarm of eager reporters and industry bigwigs. Their questions came rapid fire, a cacophony of curiosity about the revolutionary technology he'd just unveiled. But Noah's attention was elsewhere. His eyes kept drifting to the back of the room, where Jack stood with Emily on his shoulders. The little girl's eyes were wide with wonder, her father's with a mixture of pride and regret. "Mr. Matthews, how does it feel to finally receive recognition for your invention?" a reporter shouted, thrusting a microphone towards Noah's face. The question snapped Noah back to the present. He paused, considering his words carefully. "It's complicated," he finally said. "This technology was never about recognition for me. It's about the potential to make a real difference in the world." As the press conference wound down, Noah made his way through the crowd towards Jack and Emily. The tension between the two men was palpable, years of hurt and betrayal still simmering beneath the surface. "That was amazing, Mr. Noah," Emily exclaimed, her face beaming. "You're like a superhero." Noah couldn't help but smile. "Thanks, kiddo. But real superheroes are the ones who do the right thing even when it's hard." Jack's eyes met Noah's, understanding passing between them. "Emily, why don't you go find your mom? I need to talk to Mr. Noah for a minute." As Emily scampered off, Jack turned to Noah, his voice low. "I don't know how to thank you for all of this. What you've done for the company, for my family." Noah held up a hand, cutting him off. "I didn't do it for you, Jack. I did it because it was the right thing to do." Before Jack could respond, a man in a sharp suit approached them. "Mr. Matthews? I'm Senator Hawkins. I was wondering if we could discuss the potential applications of your technology for national defense." Noah's brow furrowed. This was exactly the kind of thing he'd been worried about, powerful people wanting to use his invention for purposes he never intended. "I'm sorry, Senator, but my technology is meant for clean energy production, not weapons," Noah said firmly. The senator's friendly demeanor cooled slightly. "I think you'll find that the government can be very persuasive when it comes to matters of national security." As the senator walked away, Noah felt a chill run down his spine. He turned to Jack, seeing his own concern mirrored in his former friend's eyes. "This is bigger than both of us now," Jack said quietly. "They're not going to let this go easily." Noah nodded, his mind already racing with possibilities. "We need to protect the core technology, ensure it's used for its intended purpose." Over the next few months, Noah threw himself into his work with renewed vigor. He expanded the research team, bringing in brilliant minds from around the world. But with each breakthrough came new challenges. Government pressure increased. Corporate spies attempted to steal their secrets. Noah found himself in a constant battle to maintain control over his creation. One rainy night, as Noah worked late in his lab, he received an unexpected visitor. Sarah, Jack's wife, stood in the doorway, her face etched with worry. "Noah, I'm sorry to bother you, but it's Jack. His condition is getting worse. The doctors say." Her voice broke, unable to finish the sentence. Noah felt a pang of guilt. In his drive to protect his invention, he'd almost forgotten about Jack's failing health. The next day, Noah visited Jack in the hospital. The once powerful man looked small and frail in the sterile white bed. "Noah," Jack said, his voice weak, "I need to ask you for one last favor." Noah listened as Jack outlined his request. It was audacious, potentially career-ending, but as Jack spoke, Noah realized it might be the only way to ensure their work wasn't perverted for the wrong reasons. The plan was simple in concept, but incredibly risky in execution. They would release the core technology to the public domain, making it freely available to anyone who wanted to use it for clean energy purposes. It would prevent any one entity, government or corporate, from monopolizing or weaponizing the invention. "You understand what this means, don't you?" Noah asked. "We'd be giving up billions in potential profits." The company doesn't matter," Jack interrupted. "What matters is doing the right thing. I learned that from you, Noah." As Noah left the hospital, his mind was made up. He would make the sacrifice, knowing it might cost him everything he'd worked for. The announcement sent shockwaves through the industry. Stock prices plummeted. Government officials were outraged. But from all over the world, messages of support began pouring in from environmental groups, clean energy advocates, and ordinary citizens inspired by their selfless act. In the midst of the chaos, Noah received news that Jack had passed away peacefully in his sleep. At the funeral, as he watched Emily place a flower on her father's casket, Noah realized that some sacrifices were worth making. Months later, as reports came in of communities around the world implementing the technology to provide clean, free energy to those in need, Noah stood in his old garage in Millbrook, the place where it all began. He picked up an old notebook, flipping through pages of sketches and calculations. A small smile played on his lips as he realized that his greatest invention wasn't the technology itself, but the choice to use it for the greater good. As he closed the notebook, Noah felt a sense of peace wash over him. The road ahead would be challenging, but for the first time in years, he was excited about the future. He had reclaimed not just his invention, but his integrity, his purpose, and in a way, his friendship with Jack. Walking out of the garage, Noah looked up at the stars, bright in the clear night sky. He thought about Emily, about the world she would grow up in, a world made just a little bit better by the choices they had made. And in that moment, Noah knew that every sacrifice had been worth it. The soft glow of dawn was just beginning to creep over the horizon as Noah sat at his desk, surrounded by stacks of documents and a sea of empty coffee cups. He'd been working through the night, piecing together the final elements of the plan to release the technology to the public domain. As he rubbed his tired eyes, a notification pinged on his computer screen. Breaking news. Whistleblower reveals shocking truth behind Reynolds tech scandal. Noah's heart raced as he clicked the link. The article detailed allegations from an anonymous source within the company, claiming that the original invention had been stolen from a brilliant but unknown engineer years ago. The whistleblower praised the recent decision to release the technology publicly but insisted that the full truth needed to come out. As Noah scrolled through the article, his phone began to buzz incessantly. Calls from reporters, board members, and even Emily flooded in. The carefully constructed narrative they'd built over the past months was crumbling around them. With a heavy sigh, Noah knew what he had to do. He picked up his phone and dialed Sarah's number. "Have you seen the news?" Sarah's voice was tight with worry. "I have," Noah replied. "It's time, Sarah. We need to tell Emily everything." The drive to the Reynolds home felt like the longest of Noah's life. As he pulled into the driveway, he saw Emily sitting on the front steps, her young face creased with confusion and hurt. "Is it true?" she asked as Noah approached. "Did my dad really steal your idea?" Noah's heart broke at the pain in her voice. He sat down beside her, choosing his words carefully. "Emily, the truth is complicated. Your dad made some mistakes, but he also did a lot of good. And in the end, he tried to make things right." Over the next few hours, Noah and Sarah gently explained the full story to Emily. They told her about the initial betrayal, the years of deception, but also about Jack's remorse and his final act of redemption in supporting the release of the technology. Emily listened silently, tears streaming down her face. When they finished, she looked up at Noah with eyes that seemed far older than her years. "What happens now?" she asked. Noah took a deep breath. "Now we tell the truth to everyone. No more secrets, no more hiding. It's what your dad would have wanted." The next few days were a whirlwind of press conferences, legal meetings, and public statements. Noah stood before the world and told his story, the betrayal, the years of anger, and the unexpected journey towards forgiveness and redemption. The public reaction was intense and divided. Some hailed Noah as a hero for his forgiveness and generosity. Others criticized him for covering up the truth for so long. The company's stock price fluctuated wildly as investors tried to make sense of the revelations. Through it all, Noah found strength in unexpected places. Emily, despite her initial shock and hurt, stood by his side, her resilience a testament to her father's better qualities. Sarah, too, became an ally, her grace under pressure helping to calm the media storm. As the weeks passed, the furor began to die down. The technology, now freely available, was being implemented around the world at an astonishing rate. Reports of rural communities gaining access to clean energy for the first time brought a sense of purpose to their struggles. One evening, as Noah sat in his old garage tinkering with a new idea, He heard a knock at the door. It was Emily. "I found this in my dad's things," she said, holding out a worn envelope. "It's addressed to you." With trembling hands, Noah opened the letter. Inside, in Jack's familiar scrawl, were words that brought tears to his eyes. "Noah, if you're reading this, I'm gone. I know I can never fully atone for what I did to you, but I hope that in some small way, our actions in these final months have helped set things right. You were always the better man, the true inventor. I'm sorry it took me so long to realize that. Take care of Emily for me. Help her understand that we can learn from our mistakes and become better people. You've taught me that, and it's a lesson I hope she carries with her always. Thank you, old friend, for giving me the chance to do one last good thing in this world. Jack." As Noah finished reading, he looked up to see Emily watching him intently. "My dad wasn't perfect," she said quietly, "but he tried to make things right in the end. Didn't he?" Noah nodded, wiping away a tear. "He did, Emily, and that's what matters most." In that moment, surrounded by the remnants of his past and the promise of the future, Noah realized that the truth, painful as it might be, had set them all free. The journey had been long and difficult, but it had led to something greater than he could have imagined. A legacy of innovation, forgiveness, and hope for a better world. As he and Emily left the garage together, stepping out into the warm evening air, Noah felt a sense of peace wash over him. The story wasn't over. There would be challenges ahead, new inventions to create, and a world to change. But for the first time in years, he was truly looking forward to writing the next chapter. The courtroom was packed to capacity. A sea of faces turned expectantly towards the front as Noah Matthews took the stand. It had been 18 months since the truth about the stolen invention had come to light. And now, in a twist that had shocked the nation, Noah was testifying in a federal case against several high-ranking officials implicated in the cover-up. As Noah recounted the events of the past decade, his voice steady and clear, he couldn't help but marvel at the journey that had brought him to this moment. The anger that had once consumed him felt like a distant memory, replaced by a sense of purpose that grew stronger with each passing day. In the gallery, Emily sat with her mother, her young face a mixture of pride and apprehension. At 16, she had grown into a poised young woman, wise beyond her years. The scandal had thrust her into the spotlight, but she had faced the challenges with a grace that continually amazed Noah. As the questioning continued, Noah's mind drifted to the events that had led to this day. The decision to go public with the full truth had been just the beginning. What followed was a painstaking process of untangling the web of corruption that had surrounded Jack's company for years. It hadn't been easy. There were those who wanted to bury the truth, to protect the powerful figures who had benefited from the stolen technology. But Noah, driven by a commitment to honor Jack's final wishes and to create a legacy of integrity, had persevered. The technology itself had taken on a life of its own. Free from corporate control, it had sparked a global revolution in clean energy. Noah had watched with a mixture of awe and humility as communities around the world embraced the invention, using it to power homes, schools, and hospitals in places that had never before had reliable electricity. But with the success came new challenges. Powerful interests, threatened by the democratization of energy, had fought back hard. There had been legal battles, smear campaigns, even threats to Noah's safety. Through it all, he had found strength in unlikely allies, Sarah's unwavering support, Emily's fierce determination, and a growing network of activists and scientists committed to protecting the technology's promise. As Noah finished his testimony, the lead prosecutor approached with one final question. "Mr. Matthews, after everything you've been through, the betrayal, the years of anger, the recent threats to your safety, do you regret your decision to come forward with the truth?" Noah paused, his eyes scanning the courtroom before settling on Emily. In that moment, he saw not just the daughter of his former friend, but a symbol of the future they were fighting for. He smiled softly before turning back to the prosecutor. "No," he said firmly, "I don't regret it, because this was never just about me or Jack or even the technology itself. It's about the kind of world we want to create. A world where the truth matters, where power doesn't corrupt, and where innovations that can help humanity are shared freely. It hasn't been an easy road, but it's one worth taking. As Noah stepped down from the witness stand, a hushed murmur rippled through the courtroom. He made his way back to his seat, accepting a warm squeeze of the hand from Sarah and a proud smile from Emily. The trial continued for several more weeks, each day bringing new revelations and shocking testimonies. When the verdicts were finally read guilty on all counts for the officials involved in the cover-up, Noah felt a weight lift from his shoulders. It wasn't about vengeance, he realized, but about accountability and the hope for a better future. In the days that followed, as the media frenzy began to die down, Noah found himself back in his old garage in Millbrook. He stood there, surrounded by the ghosts of his past and the blueprints for the future, when he heard a soft knock at the door. It was Emily holding a small, wrapped package. "I found this in some of Dad's old things," she said, her voice tinged with emotion. "I think he would have wanted you to have it." Noah carefully unwrapped the package to reveal a framed photograph. It showed two young men, arms thrown around each other's shoulders, grinning widely at the camera. With a start, Noah recognized himself and Jack, standing in this very garage, on the day they had first sketched out the ideas that would change the world. Tears pricked at Noah's eyes as he ran a finger over the image. "You know," he said softly, "for a long time, I thought the greatest thing I'd ever create was that technology. But I was wrong. The greatest thing we can create is a legacy of honesty, of doing what's right even when it's hard. Your father understood that in the end, and it's a lesson I hope the world never forgets." Emily nodded, her own eyes glistening. "So what happens now?" she asked. Noah smiled, placing the photograph carefully on his workbench. "Now, we keep going. There's still so much work to be done, so many new ideas to explore, and I could use a brilliant young mind to help me out. What do you say? Ready to change the world?" Emily's face lit up with a grin that reminded Noah so much of her father in those early, hopeful days. "Absolutely," she said. "Let's get to work." As they bent over the workbench together, the old garage once again humming with the energy of innovation and possibility, Noah felt a profound sense of peace wash over him. The journey had been long and painful, filled with betrayal and redemption, loss and hope. But standing there, passing on his knowledge to the next generation, he knew that every step had been worth it. The story of the stolen idea and its aftermath would be told for years to come. But the true legacy, Noah realized, wasn't in the technology itself, but in the choices they had made, the truths they had faced, and the future they were building together. As the sun set on Millbrook, casting a warm glow through the garage windows, Noah and Emily worked side by side, writing the next chapter in a story of innovation, forgiveness, and the enduring power of doing what's right. Thank you very much for listening to this story. Comment below what you thought of the ending and from which city you're listening to us. If you enjoyed this story and want to hear more, click on the next story that's appearing on your screen now. Leave your like and subscribe to our channel so we can build a huge community that shares inspiring stories together. See you soon.